Hi again, Mark here from Talking Bass. So when it comes to learning music theory as a bass player, yes, an overall knowledge of the nuts and bolts of music is always going to be useful, but the area of theory that will always be important or even essential to you is harmony. Harmony is the study of chords, chord progressions, and the overall harmonic background of a piece. Why is that important? Well, because as bass players, one of our fundamental jobs is to outline the harmony. If someone hands you a chord progression in a band, your job is to outline those chords. Now that might be something as simple as playing the root notes, but if you want to add any other notes, maybe just for interest, maybe to connect the chords or create a melodic bass line or riff, you're going to want to know those chord tones. So there are two really important things that you need to cover. One is the actual chord tones themselves, how a chord's built, what are the arpeggios of those chords, what is a third, what is the fifth, what is the seventh? Then beyond that, you want to know how chords work in a key and how they're used in combination. Now the first step in that process is learning the chords of the major key. What is chord 2? What is chord 5? What is chord 6? Any of you that have any experience with the Nashville Number System will know all about chord numbers. They are a key part of that system. Pardon the pun. So in this lesson, let's take a look at the triads of the major key. This lesson is taken from the new Ultimate Music Theory for Bass course over at Talking Bass, and in that course, I cover absolutely everything that you're ever going to want to know about theory and harmony, from the basics of sound, through intervals, chord construction, major and minor keys, chord progression, all the way through to advanced jazz harmony like tritone substitution, diminished harmony, Coltrane changes, quartal and modal harmony. The first volume is already out, and the second volume will be released within the next 2 weeks. So without further ado, let's get into the basics of triad creation in the major key. The lesson material is all there over at the Talking Bass website. Just click the link in the description below and let's get into it. Just as we can create melodies and bass lines from the notes of a major scale, we can also create a set of chords. We can build a chord from any degree of the scale. We've already worked through scales and scale degrees in Volume 1, so you should now know that in a major key, like C major for instance, C is the first, D is the second, E is the third, and so on. So within that C major key, we can build a chord on C, we can build a chord on D, we can build a chord on E, we can build a chord on any degree of the scale. But what we need to learn is what kind of chords they are, what the qualities are. Is it C major or C minor? Is it D major or D minor? Is it E major or E minor? Is it augmented? Is it diminished? We need to know what the qualities are. Well, every major scale has the same sequence of chord qualities. To work them out, we just have to go back to Volume 1 and our look at tertian harmony. We created our triads by stacking 2 thirds. Then for a 7th chord, we stacked another third. And then for the extensions, we stacked even more thirds. We use the same principle in creating chords in a key. We stack thirds, but we do it diatonically. We use only the notes of the scale. Let's take the C major scale as an example. Let's build a chord from the first degree of the scale, C. Remember, we're stacking thirds, and to do this within a scale, we can simply play a note, then miss a note, and then play a note. That's what a third is. It's an interval moving up 3 notes. So if you were to play a note, then miss a note, and then play a note, that's our third, okay? So for our first third, let's work up through the C major scale. We've got C, that's our first note, and then we work up, miss the D, play the E. So that's C to E, that's our first third. Then from the E, we play E, miss the F, play the G. Okay, so it's play a note, miss a note, play a note, miss a note, play a note, until you've created the chord that you want, be it a triad, a 7th chord, or whatever. So C, E, G. That's our first chord. What chord is that? Well, if you've worked through Volume 1, you should know that that is a C major triad. So chord 1 in C major is a C major triad. So that probably seems pretty obvious anyway. We're in a major key, it's the tonic chord, it's pretty obviously going to be a major chord. So now let's try building chord 2. So if we start on the D, so we're still in C major, we're just starting on the 2nd degree, what kind of chord is D going to be? Well, play the D, miss the E, play the F. Then miss the G, play the A, D, F, A. What kind of chord is that? That is a D minor triad. Okay, so chord 2 in C major is D minor. So we've got those first two chords. Chord 1 is major, chord 2 is minor. Now let's try building a chord from the third degree. So again, we're still in C major. We start on the E, miss the F, play the G. Miss the A, play the B. E, G, B. What kind of chord is that? That's an E minor triad. So chord 1 is major, chord 2 is minor, chord 3 is minor when we're building triads. We can repeat this process for every degree of that C major scale, which ultimately gives us the following sequence of triads. We have C major, then D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, and then B diminished. And that set of chord qualities will be the same no matter what key. So really we're just looking at the sequence of chord 1 is major, chord 2 is minor, chord 3 is minor, chord 4 is major, chord 5 is major, 6 is minor, and 7 is diminished. The chords of a key are commonly labelled using Roman numerals. So 1 is going to be I, 2 is going to be I, 3 is going to be I, 4 is going to be IV, then 5 is going to be V, 6 is going to be VI, and then 7 is going to be VII, just in case you didn't know anything about Roman numerals. And beyond that, the major chords are going to be uppercase, and minor and diminished chords are going to be lowercase, okay? So the chords of C major, again, can be labelled here using Roman numerals. And like I said, that sequence is the same for any key. So for the key of G major, we're going to have G major, A minor, B minor, C major, D major, E minor, F sharp diminished, and back to G major. Then for the key of F major, we're going to have F major, then G minor, then A minor, B flat major, C major, then D minor, and then E diminished. Learning the sets of chords for every major key is an incredibly useful skill and is the main focus of the Nashville Number System, some of you may have seen before. Because the set of chord qualities is the same for every key, we can analyse or learn tunes by chord number. We can look at common progressions like 2-5-1 or 1-6-2-5 or 1-4-5 and learn them in every key. And by knowing patterns by number and by note, we can learn songs incredibly quickly and transpose to any key at sight. But first we have to learn that sequence, and to do this we can just recognise that in a major key, chords 1, 4 and 5 are major, then the rest are all minor except for the odd one out, chord 7, which is diminished. So just think of that chord 7, the last one, that's the weird one, that's the odd one out, that's diminished. 1, 4 and 5 are major, the rest are minor, so 2, 3 and 6 are minor. So here's a basic exercise for learning the chords in a major key on the fretboard. We can simply play up through each arpeggio with root notes on a single string. So for the key of C major, if we were to just look at what the notes of C major are on the A string, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Okay? So we're going to start on each one of those notes on the A string. So if we just work up through those arpeggios, we have C major, then up to D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, then B diminished, and C major. Okay, so you can actually hear it coming back to rest on the tonic chord after you've played chord 7. You can hear that resolution. So this is where you need to know about your arpeggios already. I'm not going to have any refreshers on any of the information that we looked at in Volume 1. You need to know all of the arpeggios for all of the chords at this point. So you can work through all of those chords and don't just rely on fretboard patterns here. You really want to know all of those chords in a key. So, you're learning the C major key here. So you're learning C major, D minor, E minor, etc. So if I was to say, what is the chord 3 in C major? It's going to be E minor. That's what you want to aim for, to know all of those chords in every key, which is a little bit like learning your times tables. It's just learning all of those chord qualities in a key. So it's worth saying the chord as you play it. So when you're working through C major, D minor, E minor, F major. Say it before you play it, okay? Then you can try working through all of the other keys. So if we were to play through G major, you could start on the G, 3rd fret of the E string and just work up. G major, A minor, B minor, C major, D major, E minor, F sharp diminished, and back to G major. We can also play through that set of chords using block chords like we played in Volume 1. So again, you really need to know the basic chord voicings for the triads and the seventh chords, because we will be looking at seventh chords as well. So I'm not going to have a refresher here on those. You need to have worked through those in Volume 1. So if we were going to play through the triads in C major, we could play C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, and back to C. And then, again, try through all of the different keys. So if we were going to play through F major, you could play F major, G minor, A minor, B flat major, C major, D minor, E diminished, and back to F. So, these chords form the harmony of a key. Each chord has its own set of scale degrees that we'll look at in the next lesson. These combinations of dissonances create tensions that want to release, and this is how we create chord progressions. Certain chord movements are more natural than others, and when we study harmony, we learn how to use chords and progressions to harmonize melodies and create music. This is the craft and art of music composition. Now, this can all sound quite complicated when described in a very granular way like that. All this talk of individual dissonances and tensions, but this is just the nuts and bolts, theory behind what is actually a very simple concept. As you learn more and more chord progressions and how they work, you'll start to see recurring patterns and uses for both groups of chords and individual chords. As a bass player, this is incredibly useful because our job in the band is to outline that harmony and act as a conduit between the harmony and the rhythm. Learning how all of this works is going to provide you with a thorough understanding of the music that you play and makes for, much quicker learning of songs, better bass lines, and just all-round improved musicianship. So next, let's just try playing arpeggios through some very simple chord progressions. We don't need to understand the nuts and bolts of each progression at this point. We can just learn them and get a feel for how those chords sound within a key while memorizing the actual qualities of the chords on each scale degree. For each of these chord progressions, you should try practicing them in every key. There's a listing of the progressions in the lesson material to help you work through them. In every case, you should be learning the chords by note name as well as by pattern. You need to know that a 1-4-5 progression in C major is C major, F major, and G major, but also that a 1-4-5 in F major is F major, B flat major, and C major. So first things first, let's look at a 1-4-5 progression. So we're going to look at chord 1 for 2 bars, then 4 for a bar, and 5 for a bar. So if we were going to play 1-4-5 in the key of C major, what chords are we going to have? Well, it's going to be C major, that's chord 1, F major is chord 4, and G major is chord 5. So we're just sticking to triads at the moment. So let's look at those arpeggios. So for chord 1, remember it's 2 bars, so we play it twice. Then F major, then G major. Okay, so that's just the arpeggios of a 1-4-5 progression in C major. And it doesn't matter where we play them, so we could play the C major here, then we could move up to the F and up to the G, okay? So that's in C major, and then you could try in a different key. So let's try in the key of A flat, okay? So if we try A flat, what are the chords going to be? Well, in A flat, major. Chord 1 is going to be A flat major. Remember, it's going to be the same set of chord qualities every time. They're all major, 1, 4, and 5. So it's going to be A flat, a D flat, and E flat, okay? So A flat major, D flat major, E flat major, okay? So A flat major, D flat major, E flat major. And like I said, don't just rely on the fretboard patterns. Try to avoid that as much as you can. It's okay to learn, the actual pattern for the arpeggio itself, but in terms of the actual chord numbers, knowing that in A flat major it's 1 is A flat, and then 4 is D flat, and then 5 is E flat, That's what you want to look to memorize. An ideal way of running these through the keys is going to be to play them through the cycle of fifths or fourths. I'd probably recommend working through the cycle of fifths with this because then you get to work through the natural notes first, okay? So try it in C, then try it in G, G major, C major, and D major, then try the key of D major. That's going to be D major, G major, and A major, and so on. As well as the arpeggios, you also want to try the block chords. So for that 1-4-5 progression in C major, we've got C major. Then for 4, we've got F major, then G major, and then back to C. So now, it's worth mentioning here that we are going to be having a deep dive into each of these chord progressions in later lessons. At the moment, you don't really have to think too much about what's going on in the actual chords. We're simply just looking at the Roman numerals and then just matching them up with the correct notes in each key. Next, let's try a 1-6-2-5. So if we're in the key of C major, again, look at the chords in there. What do we have? So for chord 1, we've got C major. What's chord 6? That's going to be A minor. What's chord 2? That's going to be D minor. And what's chord 5? That's going to be G major. So, with the arpeggios, just one bar each, we've got C major. Then for A minor, chord 6. Chord 2, D minor. Then chord 5, G major. Just try playing that round and round. 6, 2, 5, and back to C. And like I said, you can run that through the cycle of fifths. Then for the block chords, for that 1-6-2-5, I'd probably recommend playing maybe the open position voicing for the 1, so it's easier to get to the chord 6. So we have C major, A minor, D minor, and then G major, and then back to C. If we were to play it up here, A minor, D minor, G major. Now let's try one more. Let's try the popular chord progression of 1-5-6-4. You can see how when you actually start looking at these just as numbers, it's a little bit like memorizing telephone numbers. So we've got 1-5-6-4. So what's that going to be in C major? Well, chord 1 is obviously C. What was chord 5? That was G major. What's chord 6? That's that minor there, that's A minor, and then what's chord 4? That's going to be F major. So again, with the arpeggios, we've got chord 1, C major. Chord 5 is G major. Then chord 6, A minor. And chord 4, F major. And we're back. So. 1, 5, 6, 4. Then as block chords we have C major, G major, A minor, F major. So you can hear the sound of the chords wanting to come back to C. We can arpeggiate it. That is one of the most common chord progressions in all of pop music. Now, it's also important to point out that these chords within a key are not the only chords that we use in a piece. It's common for people learning this sequence of chord qualities, 1 is major, 2 is minor, 3 is minor, etc., then to assume that you have to stick to those chords. And that's not the case at all. I'll get questions all the time from students asking why there is a B-flat major chord used in the key of C major, or why there's a D-sharp diminished chord in the key of D major. Those chords aren't in the diatonic set. So where do they come from? These chords in a major key are just a result of the notes and intervals within the major scale. But we make use of chromatic chords and chromatic alterations to chords just to add flavour, all the time. For example, chord 6 in a major key is minor, or a minor 7, as you'll see in upcoming lessons. But it's very common to switch that to a major or a dominant 7, and then you get this kind of sound. So C major then A7. That A7 is not in the key of C major. Or we might take a chord 4, which should be major in a major key, and turn it into a minor. And that gives us this kind of sound. So there's chord 1, chord 4, change it to a minor. That's an F minor. That is not in the key of C major. But it still works. It sounds great. And then for a completely chromatic chord, if we're in the key of C major, we might use the chord A flat major. That's a flat 6 chord. And that sounds like this. I mean, that sounds really cool. But A flat is not in the C major scale. That A flat major chord is not in the key of C major. But again, it sounds great. So in each of those cases, we're still in the same major key, but we're making changes to just express the sound that we want, a certain vibe, or to accommodate a chromatic melody note. Because we have a diatonic set that we use in creating the basic key, moving to anything outside of that set is going to provide drama or surprise in the harmony, and we'll be looking into this as we progress through the course. As I mentioned, it's important to learn the chords of each key by note. If you've already worked on the scale degrees from Volume 1, then learning the chords is simply a case of adding the correct chord quality to each degree. Again, the chords of each key are going to be listed in the lesson material and you'll be tested on them in the quiz below.